Okay, everybody. Last night I went to go see Godzilla King of the Monsters, and being a big Godzilla fan, I figured I'd do a spoilerific review of it. So keep in mind this will have spoilers in it. What I'm going to try to do first is do some not really story driven spoilers, and then when I get to that point, I will give you all a warning. So without further ado, here we go. I'll probably be reading off of my computer for the notes that I took for this, so just bear with me if I'm looking up at the screen or something. That's what I'm doing. So I think what we'll do first is talk about the story structure and essentially what this movie, it moves really fast. It gets straight into the monster action. So pretty much the movie's like it's like a 2-hour fight scene essentially. There's not a lot of focus on the human characters, so there's not a lot of time to develop them, which is like the opposite of what the 2014 film was, which spent way too much time focusing on the human characters and developing them and not giving enough time to the monsters. But unfortunately, this movie seems to overcompensate, so there's a lot of monster action, but all the human characters, there's no development to them. So it's like you have to have one or the other. You can't really have both. This is my main criticism of the movie, and it's not because I don't like the human characters. I like the human characters. The problem is we don't know nothing about them. We don't ever really learn more about them as the movie progresses. So we're just kind of plopped into the film with them, and that's about all there is to them. It would have been nice if they had extra scenes to establish the characters a little better and flesh them out more, but the movie was already pushing 2 hours, so I mean, if we put in any more human exposition, we'd be going like 2.5 hours to 3 hours long, so I can see where that would be problematic. Next category, we're going with sound design. The composer, I can't remember his name, but Bear something, I think. But he used a lot of the classic Godzilla themes in here, which I thought was really nice because the 2014 film didn't have Godzilla's theme in it or any of the classic themes. So it was a real nice nostalgia trip getting to hear those. I didn't expect to hear Mothra's theme played as much as it was, but there were several moments in the film where they used it, and it was pretty cool. And they used them, but they didn't overuse them. They used them when it was appropriate, and they didn't use them haphazardly, so that was good. And then during the end credits, they did a remix of Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla song, so I thought that was pretty cool too. Godzilla used different kind of roars in this film. I never really liked the 2014 roar because I could barely hear like the original roar in there with it, except for the very end. I don't hate it, but I hated that's the only freaking roar you ever heard in the 2014 movie. And on here, he used a lot of some of his previous roars and more recognizable classic roars. So I thought that was pretty cool. They updated Mothra's roars or chirps or whatever you want to call them, and I actually liked hers pretty good. I think they modernized it pretty good. Rodan, I couldn't even hardly hear his roars in the film, but it didn't sound, whatever I could hear of it didn't sound like his classic roar. I'd probably need to go back and view it again to try to see if I can hear it, but I never did really hear it in the movie. And then same for King Ghidorah. There was parts I could kind of hear. The classic roar kind of sounded like the Millennium King Ghidorah, actually, in parts of it, but then there was like these generic snarls and stuff thrown in there too, but they weren't like as recognizable as Godzilla's and Mothra's. Overall, the soundtrack to this movie was so much better than the first one that I'm actually thinking about buying the soundtrack to listen to. It was that good. The next category I'm going to go through is the special effects and the creature designs. As special effects, your standard Hollywood fare, it's just a CG fest like every other Hollywood film anymore. But I really like the creature designs. They nailed the big four. They nailed Godzilla's design. They nailed Mothra's, Rodan's, and Ghidorah's. I really love Rodan's design in particular. And Mothra's, I've heard people kind of iffy on it, but I think they did a pretty good job with it for this film. And as far as Godzilla's design is concerned, I was perfectly content with the 2014 design, but I kind of like how they brought the more traditional dorsal fins back, and the feet had larger claws, more reminiscent of the classic Godzilla design. I've been seeing some reactions online that some people really didn't like the comic relief and the cheesiness of this movie. And I didn't mind the comic relief. I mean, yeah, it was just stupid, like, one-liners, but what are you going to do? I liked them. I got a good chuckle out of them. The ending of this movie is so cheesy, which I'll get into it later, but I really loved it, even though it was super cheesy. My only concern with the cheesiness is I hope that any future Godzilla movies, if they make them, I hope they don't get, like, super, super cheesy. I hope they stay, like, they don't have to be, like, as bleak as the 2014 film, but I don't want them to become so cheesy that they're like the later Showa era Godzilla films where he's, like, dancing around and crap. So hopefully they keep it a little serious. So I think now we're getting into the major spoilers section that's plot related. So if you haven't watched it yet and you don't want to get it spoiled, now's the time to click off. For the rest of us, let's delve into it. So I think what I'm going to do first is talk about each individual monster in the film and what I thought about them. So, of course, we'll start with Godzilla. And point number one that I really like, he's actually in this movie. Gareth Edwards, take note. This is how you make a Godzilla movie, by putting Godzilla in it. Like I said, they updated his design so his spines look different and other little features, but mainly the spines are what look most different. I wish I think it would have been cool if he started out with his 2014 design and then, like, something happened in the film. Like, there is a point in the film, which I'll get to here shortly, where he gets, like, beefed up. It would have been cool if he, like, mutated and grew the spines then, I think. But, I mean, that's asking a lot. You got several different models for the characters. That'd probably be more trouble than it was worth. But I thought it'd be nice to have some kind of explanation for why he looked slightly different. And apparently he's also taller now. Now he's slightly taller than Shin Godzilla. So at this point, it almost seems like Toho and Legendary are having a pissing contest to see who can have the tallest Godzilla. So I think, like, now Toho should just make Shin Godzilla 2 just to make him slightly taller than Legendary, just to see how back and forth they're going to get with it. I just think it's kind of funny how they just keep upping each other on the sizes. Then there is the part at the end where Godzilla becomes Fire Godzilla, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, because it seems a bit out there for what I thought this series was going to be. I thought this series was going to be more grounded in reality, and of course, that's a moot point anyway, because this movie's literally about a 400-foot-tall giant lizard fighting a 500-foot-tall giant three-headed alien dragon. So, I mean, any arguments I make about it being grounded is hypocritical anyway, but that's just kind of how I am about this film. So next up is Mothra. I like that her larva form got more screen time. Like, you see that one shot in the trailer and it's like, oh, that's probably going to be all there is to it. No, she actually, like, it's not a lot, but it's a few minutes, like the whole part that her first, like, appearance is her in her larval form. And I actually like the design. I didn't say nothing about it before, but I really like it. It's different, but it's not like a bad different. It looks, it looks cool. I like her larval form design. And then close to the end where her and Rodan wind up fighting. What little you actually see of the fight, I really liked. Especially where she winds up, I thought she killed him when she sticks her, like, this bee stinger through his chest. I mean, it goes clean through it. So I thought I like that fight. While Godzilla's fighting Ghidorah, those two are fighting each other in the meantime. And then, like, when Godzilla becomes Fire Godzilla, He becomes Fire Godzilla because Mothra winds up getting killed by King Ghidorah, and she winds up like exploding or whatever, and her essence like is absorbed by Godzilla, and that's what causes him to turn into Fire Godzilla. And again, that's like one of the more fantastical parts of the movie that I'm feeling. They're kind of we're kind of on that slippery slope between going completely cheesy and fantasy realm instead of being more grounded in reality. So yeah, like even whenever Godzilla does his nuclear pulse, you can hear like Mothra's cries as he's doing it, like she's part of him. It's kind of ridiculous, really. And for Rodan's kind of a peculiar case because it almost feels like he's detached from the other three. Like the other three are like established as like alpha predators or nothing, but Rodan's just kind of there. Like he's not. I don't think he's ever established as an alpha predator, and it's just weird because. And again, it feels like he's detached from all of them because he's like, he doesn't have any fight sequence with Godzilla in the whole movie. Like, that drives me nuts. He doesn't, in fact, I don't think they actually interact with each other until the very end of the movie. I swear they don't. And I didn't think he'd actually be a villain for that matter. I didn't know that he'd actually be a villain in this film, but literally, he fights King Ghidorah for like 5 minutes and then just decides to be his lackey for the rest of the film. Like, it's really weird. And then like at the end, like he switches, like he doesn't actually die. Mothra doesn't kill him. He somehow survives his gaping chest wound. And at the end, winds up like bowing down to Godzilla at the end. And I was like, I almost expected Godzilla to like blow his head off because it's funny because like you can see like him groveling, like he literally bows down and is like looking up at Godzilla, and I was like, oh man, Godzilla's like just gonna explode him any second. It was really funny. Now we get to the big one, King Ghidorah, and I didn't really have any. It's King Ghidorah. What are you gonna do? So I was like, well, does that make him kind of a bland villain? I mean, he's just doing stuff, The one standout moment I have for King Ghidorah is when him and Godzilla are fighting at the end, and he literally picks Godzilla up and carries him up into the freaking atmosphere, into outer space, and drops him. And Godzilla just... boom! And that's like the one standout scene I remember with Ghidorah as far as like the fighting and stuff. That was a pretty cool scene. I got to admit, that was pretty cool. And this sounds stupid, and I got an explanation for it. He's really, really durable, and I think he's almost too durable. But here's what I'm saying. Because Godzilla, even after, like, of course, their first fight, he winds up getting hurt or whatever, but he comes back, and he's, like, beefed up, relatively. Well, he still can't beat King Ghidorah. It takes Mothra getting killed and then her essence turning him into Fire Godzilla before he starts getting the upper hand. Now, don't get me wrong. As soon as he turns into Fire Godzilla, he freaking just obliterates King Ghidorah essentially within like 3 or 4 hits, and he's dead. Which, and this is where I'm getting at with this. It just feels like it undercuts Godzilla as like the alpha predator if he has to power up that much just to kill King Ghidorah. It's like I'd rather him be able to kill him on his own merits. I don't like that whole I'm getting the crap beat out of me so I get some random power at the end so I can just curb stomp him at the end. I'd rather it be like a fight, just them just at the fighting the hardest that they can instead of it just being, I'm going to curb stomp you, so let me curb stomp you right back, and that'd be the fight. But that's just my opinion. King Ghidorah has regenerative powers in this movie. Godzilla rips one of his heads off in like their second fight or whatever, and when Ghidorah comes back, he grows the head back like that, and there is like a significance to this because this actually gets brought up again later in the movie. And I'm going to go ahead and go on a little miniature rant about regenerative powers in these movies because they always get so ridiculous with them. Like, I don't even like the, I'm going to blow your arm off and then you grow it back. Like, I think that's ridiculous. But, like, even if they go to the extreme, like they kind of hinted at in Shin Godzilla, where if he, like, gets if that arm gets blown off, it'll grow into a completely different Godzilla. That drives me nuts, and it kills me. But anyway, that's my rant on the regenerative stuff. I just think it's a bit too excessive at that point. So, in addition to these 4, there are several other Titans. According to the movie, there are 17 Titans, so that leaves us 13 other Titans, technically speaking. And so if you count King Kong, that's what, 12? So there's a dozen more of these things running around. They're just cameo appearances. Like, none of them, I don't think any single one of them show up for more than like a minute. But they're in the movie. My favorite one out of these original Titans was the Behemoth. He's like a giant woolly mammoth that doesn't have a trunk, and it's like a sloth ape thing. It's weird, but he's really cool. And one of these other Titans happens to be a Muto, which is the things Godzilla fought in the previous movie. It's a random freaking Muto, and it shows up, and it's still alive. And yeah, I thought it was neat. And the part at the end that I was talking about, they, along with Rodan, I said Rodan bows down, all of them have converged at this spot where Godzilla has killed King Ghidorah, and they all bow to Godzilla. And Godzilla's just sitting there and just roars triumphantly at the end. But it's so cheesy, but it's so funny, and I love it. And these other Titans, I would love to see them used somewhere in the future, but I don't think, I'm not holding my breath, because see, the same thing happened with on Kong Skull Island. You had all these monsters that they were teasing through the whole movie of showing up, and all it was is they showed up for the one scene, and then they're gone. No mention of them ever again. So I'm afraid this is what's going to happen to these guys. It would be awesome if they showed up in later movies, assuming they make any, but I'm not holding my breath. But I would love to have a Behemoth action figure. I'm not going to lie. So the next section, there is so much teasing for Godzilla vs. Kong in this movie. It is not funny. They mention King Kong and Skull Island so much in this movie explicitly. It's not even like a little inside thing. It is all over the place. They mention Kong. They mention Skull Island. They mention that Hollow Earth theory thing that was in that movie, and all of that. And even at the end of the movie during the credits, it's showing like newspaper clips of like Titans converging on Skull Island, and it's showing Skull Island like in the footage, like it's slowly creeping in on it. So it's like, I don't know where they're going with this, but man, they are teasing it hard. I really want to see the teaser for this movie. It's going to have to drop sometime, and I'm glad we ain't got to wait 5 years for it. But yeah, I'm getting excited for that. So I'm going to get into my little nitpicks real quick, what I didn't like about the movie particularly. And then that should wrap us up. So I'm going to start with a little story nitpicks right here. So like I said earlier, the movie is like a point A to point B story. I mean, there's like little as far as like little in between taking a breather stuff. It's going here, going here, going here, going here. The movie literally restarts with a recap of the battle at the end of the first movie, which it looks cool. It's like great. We get to see Godzilla. It's like literally when the movie starts, but it's like this sets the tone for the rest of the film. And unfortunately, the human characters don't get to develop at all. I think the most we get out of the new characters is like the dad, scientist dude. There's like a scene with him at the beginning, and that's like it. The rest of them were just plopped right in there. Let's go with it. There was 3 characters from the previous film that returned. There was Dr. Serizawa, and then I think her name's Vivian Graham. She's like that female scientist that's with him all the time. And then there's that Admiral dude that I didn't think would show up, but he's technically in there. He's not like a major character, but he like pops up for one scene, and he's there. So there's 3 characters. Well, the sucky thing is, so these 3 characters exist. You've seen them. You know how they're like. Well, 2 of them wind up dying in the movie. So the first one that dies is that Vivian Graham lady. When King Ghidorah comes to life, he eats her. It's like, heck, so much chaos happens in that scene, you wouldn't even notice it until there's like a scene later, and it just shows her name on the monitor, says deceased on it. I was like, oh dang, this movie ain't joking around. Well, then the part that kills me, the second person that dies, is Serizawa. I like Dr. Serizawa. He was like my favorite character in the first film. He's just that cool old Japanese guy who's like likes Godzilla and everything. But see, he has a very stoic death too, and it's like this scene was like probably one of the best scenes in the film. He winds up sacrificing himself to revive Godzilla because see, after he gets beaten the first time, they go and find where he rests and lives or whatever, and they're going to detonate a nuke to revive him. Well, of course, the submarine, something messes up with like the launcher for the nuke. So Sarazawa, he volunteers to go and just set it next to Godzilla and blow it up, detonate it manually. Well, it's really touching because he's got it set and it's ticking down. The time's ticking on the bomb, and he goes up to Godzilla and just like puts his hand up on Godzilla's face and just like rubs him and says, "Goodbye, old friend," and then it just blows up. And I was like, oh no. I love Dr. Sarazawa. It was a very fitting, if he was going to go out, that'd be the way to do it. It was a very good scene. It made me kind of sad. So I guess with those two, the only ones we got left is the villains. And the mom scientist is a villain, which looking back, the trailers make it obvious that she's a villain, so leave me alone. I wasn't paying that much attention. But it was just, you think it'd be a twist like later in the film. No, I mean, it's like 15 minutes in. And it's just like, oh yeah, I'm with these eco-terrorists, which are the other villains, which, excuse me, they exist like solely to move the plot forward. Like there really ain't much to them. They're just kind of here. They're led by some dude, some old British guy, I guess. But anyways, and they seem to get off scot-free at the end of the movie. They disappear right before the final battle starts because they turn the mom loose because she's had like a change of heart and she winds up dying. But yeah, they like don't show up for the rest of the movie. Or do they? We'll get to that in a minute. So there's one little plot point. Oh no, before that. The oxygen destroyer. I forgot this movie. I forgot the movie was even going to have the oxygen destroyer in it. I remember there was a tweet by the director like a year ago of the oxygen destroyer, and what kills me about it is that it's one. Lord, it's like the freaking other Titans in this movie. It's a one scene wonder, and it kills me. It might as well not have even been the oxygen destroyer. It could have been a freaking top secret military weapon, generic military weapon for all we know. It's literally just it's like pretty much a nuke with a different color on it, because I'm not really even sure how exactly it works. It certainly doesn't work like the original one from the original Godzilla movie did, because it detonates when it hits the water, and that's actually what almost kills Godzilla. King Ghidorah actually doesn't actually cause that. Doesn't cause Godzilla to almost die. It's that stupid oxygen destroyer. So good job, humanity. You almost screwed everybody over. But yeah, it's like there's no mention of it before or after that one scene. Like they have already literally shot it and it's going towards them when they mention it the first time. So I was like, really? But anyways, I thought it was cool. I just wish they had like some exposition about it earlier, mentioning it or anything, scene showing it somewhere. It would have been cool, but they didn't. So that was a little thing I didn't like about that. The plot, I was it almost went exactly as I thought it would. The first half was different. I figured what they would do, I thought they would like unleash Mothra and then Rodan and then King Ghidorah, build up to the worst one, and then everything would start going to crap. Now what they did is slightly different. See, they start Mothra. 10 minutes into the movie, Mothra has already been revealed and has escaped her containment and everything and has cocooned herself. And then they're already heading to Antarctica to unleash King Ghidorah. So I wish they hadn't have done that. I know it's like not, it breaks like the mold of how these movies usually do this kind of stuff. But I feel like it undercuts King Ghidorah and Rodan, because with King Ghidorah, it's like, well, there's not been enough time to build up any tension with him. Like they're literally already, they're just gonna bust him out. So there ain't his reveal doesn't feel as big of a payoff. And then with Rodan, well, you've already got the worst enemy, like the main villain has already been unleashed. So you're gonna just go a little after him and just like kind of shoo Rodan out, not to as much fanfare it feels. I just feel like it makes him not seem as cool because, you've already got your main guy out, so who cares about this guy? So I was like, on that part. But the rest of the plot went exactly as I figured. Godzilla gets beat, and then he gets revived, and then comes back for a final battle, and they duke it out. I didn't know exact plot points or nothing, but I figured it would go along that structure, and it pretty much did. So then here's another plot-related thing I had issue with. After Godzilla gets revived with that nuke, and he goes and fights King Ghidorah, one of the scientist guys says, "Oh man, Godzilla's overloaded with nuclear energy. He's going to blow up in like 12 minutes. Well, the 12 minutes clearly have passed, and there's no mention of it after. There is no mention of nothing. He shows no signs of about to explode from a nuclear warhead being absorbed through him. I mean, it's weird. I don't know why they mention it. I don't know where they were going with it, because it doesn't go anywhere in the film. If I'm mistaken, please let me know. But I swear I did not catch anything relating to it. Here's another plot-related nitpick. Mothra reveals herself. She reveals herself in her Imago form, and like shows where Godzilla's resting and stuff. So they go through and revive Godzilla and stuff. Well, she just disappears and doesn't show up again until Godzilla's already been fighting King Ghidorah. So my problem is, so you're meaning to tell me that Godzilla managed to swim all the way up to Boston and fight King Ghidorah for like 10-15 minutes before she managed to show up? Yeah, that seems a little weird. I don't know where she went. She must have been on her coffee break or something. And in general, like the movement of the characters is all over the place. Lord, the human characters in that giant airship thing, they start at that Castle Bravo place, I think, and they go to Antarctica. They work their way back up to Mexico, then work their way back to the United States. And this is all throughout the course of the movie, just constant. It's literally a point A to point B movie, because you're literally just driving one way and the other. I mean, they're bouncing everywhere. Then my last complaint is Mothra and Rodan didn't get very much screen time. I was kind of shocked. I figured they'd be like split even, with King Ghidorah, not necessarily Godzilla, but I figured they'd all be, relatively evenly share the screen, and they didn't. And I think why is because I was expecting this to be more of a Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster remake instead of a Godzilla versus King Ghidorah remake. So really, if you think about it, with Mothra being Godzilla's ally and Rodan being King Ghidorah's ally, if you think of them just as like the sidekicks to the main hero and villain, I think it works out better. It just wasn't what I was expecting. Some other things I like, at the end of the credits, they show there's a dedication to Yoshimitsu Banno and Haruo Nakajima. And Haruo Nakajima is the guy that played the original Godzilla all those years ago, and they both passed away relatively recently, so I thought that was a nice little respectful thing that they did there at the end. Oh, and I forget to mention the stinger. So you know how I mentioned King Ghidorah could regenerate? Well, that head that Godzilla tore off is found in the ocean by a bunch of people on that island that Rodan came out of and where they fought. So the eco-terrorists who seem to have got off scot-free, yeah, they show up again, and they are going to buy this severed head of King Ghidorah. So what does this open the possibility for? Clearly, King Ghidorah is going to come back or something. I only hope that it is for Godzilla 3 and not Godzilla vs. Kong, because I would rather Godzilla vs. Kong be just that. It's Godzilla and King Kong fighting each other. I don't want it to be some Batman versus Superman scenario where they fight for 5 minutes then realize, oh, there's something worse, let's team up. I'd rather it be those two fighting and then save any other monster action for another Godzilla or Kong movie is what I would prefer. But we'll see how that works out. So, final thoughts. Well, the critics are rimming this movie right now. They is not giving it very good reviews. General audience score seems to be a lot more favorable. Last I checked, it was like 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like it matters, but so all I say to that is screw the critics. They're usually full of crap anyway. So go out and watch this movie, because if nothing else, it is a heck of a good popcorn flick.